I have kept this watch log for 11 years. I have recorded arrivals and departures, the names of dignitaries, the inventory of gate passes, the weather at the outer wall. I have never written anything in the notes column except facts. One line this past dawn I left blank. I will try to explain why. 41 days after the collapse of Thresh Station, the Kethoran Ascendancy's outer refugee camp held roughly 4,000 displaced people in canvas, rows along the base of the capital's second wall. I was posted to the eastern gate, a gap between two sections of collapsed barrier that we had rigged with wire mesh and two lanterns. Not a gate, really. A habit we had given a name so the paperwork would hold. The Queen came to the morning muster every day. I want to be clear about that because some of the later accounts say she had withdrawn into the palace. She had not. Vareth Saildorn came at dawn in the same gray field coat she had worn since the third day after the collapse, the mourning braid still tight against the left side of her head, and she walked every row. She spoke to people. She remembered names. She did not perform this. There was no audience she was working for at 6 in the morning in a camp that smelled of dust and field ration fuel. She simply did it, the way she had done everything in the 41 days since the station went down, with a steadiness that I suspected was costing her more than any of us could calculate. Her husband, Irath Khan, had been at Thresh Station when the corridor network failed. I had met him twice. A civilian infrastructure contractor, the Ascendancy had brought him in to redesign the life support relay grid in the station's lower subsections, work the Kethoran Engineering Guild considered routine maintenance, and had been putting off for 3 seasons. He was not a large man. He had the kind of face that you forget to look at when there are more interesting things in the room, weathered, quiet, brown eyes that did not ask for your attention. He had shaken my hand at the gate when he arrived and said he would try to be out of the way. I had thought, yes, you probably will be. The station collapse came without warning, a structural resonance failure in the central load column, the kind of thing that the Guild's models said happened once in 800 years. The lower subsections went first, emergency bulkheads sealed. By the time the dust cleared enough to run a sensor sweep, 12 of the station's 19 corridor sections were sealed or rubble. We lost contact with the lower grid entirely. 43 people were logged as unaccounted for in the sealed sections, including one civilian infrastructure contractor listed on no emergency roster, because the Guild had not yet updated his access credentials to the permanent staff manifest. No signals emerged from the sealed sections. By day 6, the Guild's senior engineer delivered the assessment in flat, official Kethoran. The life support relays in the lower grid had almost certainly failed with the structural event. Without cycling, the atmosphere in the sealed sections would have become unbreathable within 36 hours. She said this without looking at the Queen. The math required her to say it, and she said it. I watched Vareth receive this information. She did not move. She asked one question: had any relay cycling been detected from outside the sealed sections? The Guild engineer said no. What she meant, and what I understood, was that the question was already answered. The council began raising the formal death declaration within the week. An official presumption, they said, necessary for administrative continuity. There was also the matter of the Vethani Compact's offered alliance, a partnership that required, under its terms, that the Queen hold no prior bond under Ascendancy Charter. The council did not press. They simply placed the document on the table at the end of each session, and each session Vareth set it aside without signing, and no one said anything further. She wore the mourning braid and walked the camp rows at dawn, and set the document aside at the end of each session, and 41 days passed. On the 42nd morning, I was at my post at the eastern gap when a runner arrived from the dust zone perimeter. A runner, not a signal, which meant something the sensors hadn't caught first. I thought it was probably another salvage team with another body from the outer debris field. We had recovered 11 over the weeks. I had logged them all. The runner stopped in front of me, hands on her knees, and said, A column of people had emerged from the dust zone half a kilometer out, on foot, 43 of them, and the one at the front was carrying a child. I left the gate post, which I had not done in 11 years of watch duty, and I walked toward the dust zone perimeter, and then I walked faster, and by the time I was 50 meters out I could see them. 43 people, most of them barely upright, some helping others walk, the way people move when they have been doing it for a very long time and have run out of the kind of energy that comes from hope and are running on something else instead. They were dust gray. All of them, clothes, skin, hair. The kind of gray that settles into you when you have been living inside a collapsed structure for 40 days and there is no water to spare for washing. The one at the front was carrying a child of perhaps 4 years, asleep against his shoulder. He was not large. He had a quiet face that you would forget to look at when there were more interesting things in the room. I knew the walk before I knew the face. I had seen it twice, crossing my gate, and something in the body remembers a walk even when the face is buried under 40 days of station dust. I went back through the camp at something that was not a walk. I do not fully account for the next 4 minutes in my log because I was not at my post, and the log reflects only what occurs at the post. What I know is that I found the Queen in the 3rd row of the eastern quarter, speaking with an elder whose shelter tent had partially collapsed in the night, and I stood in front of her, and I could not immediately produce the words in the correct order. She looked at my face, and the mourning braid went very still. I said, "There is a survivor column emerging from the dust zone, 43 people." She said, "The consort's name was on no roster." I said, "I know." She said, "Dale, say what you are not saying." I said his name, just his name. Irath Khan, 2 words. I watched them land. I have recorded 11 years of arrivals and departures. I have watched the Queen receive news of treaty failures, of casualties, of a collapsed station, of 41 days of silence. I had never watched her face do what it did in the 2 seconds after I said those 2 words. It was not an expression I have a word for in Kethoran. It was the thing that happens when something you had finished grieving refuses to stay finished, and you do not know yet whether that is mercy or a cruelty of a different kind, and your face has to hold all of it at once before you know which. She walked. I have recorded her walking, precise, composed, field coat straight. She did not walk that way across the camp. She walked the way people walk when the only thing that matters is the distance. He was through the gap in the wall by the time she reached it. He had set the child down, gently, into the arms of a camp worker who appeared from nowhere the way people do in a crisis, and he had stopped. He did not call her name. He did not walk toward her. He had been moving for 40 days, and now he stopped and he waited, the way someone waits when they are not certain they have the right to close the remaining distance themselves. She closed it. I will not record what she said to him. It was not said for the log, and I am not going to put it in the log. What I will record, because it belongs to the official account. The Ascendancy Council was present in the camp that morning, 3 of them, and they witnessed the return. The alliance document was removed from the session table that afternoon and has not been placed there since. I will also record. The guild's senior engineer came to the gate the following morning with a request to speak with the consort at his earliest convenience. What Irath Khan had done in the sealed lower sections, manually cycling the life support relays by hand, alone, for 40 days, keeping the atmosphere breathable for 42 people in a grid the guild had assessed as non-functional, was not something she had a framework for in the guild's technical catalog. She would need to understand how he had done it. She said this in the careful way people use when admitting that something they believed impossible was not. I wrote 1 note in the log that morning. The note column is reserved for facts. The note reads, "The consort returned at dawn. The Queen's mourning braid came undone in her own hands. I made no record of what she said to him. Some things are not for the log." That is the full account. I have kept this watch log for 11 years, and that is the only line I have ever been glad to leave incomplete.